Stop chasing the need to be liked, because that very desire is the silent poison that is draining you day by day. Do you want to make a real impact? Then listen carefully. People don't respect you. They use you. And the harshest truth is that you were the one who handed them the keys to do it. Every fake smile, every forced yes born out of fear, every time you swallowed your anger just to avoid making others uncomfortable, those were moments where you surrendered without even realizing it. You thought you were earning affection, when in reality you were digging your own social grave. The love you are chasing so desperately isn't love at all. It's a mask, a hidden contract that demands more and more from you. Today, it takes your time. Tomorrow, it takes your dignity. And soon after, it steals your very identity. And what do you receive in exchange? A fragile kind of care that shatters with a rumor, a mistake, or a single word said at the wrong time. That approval you crave so much is nothing more than a rope around your neck, and every single day you allow others to pull it tighter. But stay with me, because here is my promise. You will learn how to cut that rope. You will discover why respect is far more powerful than love. Those who endure and rise in life are not the ones who beg for sympathy. They are the ones who know how to cultivate power. And the most unsettling realization will be when you look back and see how many times you thought you were acting out of kindness, when in truth you were signing your own sentence of weakness. Brace yourself, because what you're about to hear is not comfortable, but it's the only thing that can restore the strength you've been losing. The biggest mistake you've been making isn't simply looking for affection, but believing that affection could ever protect you. Let me tell you the truth. No one dares to say out loud. Sympathy is not a shield. It's a sweet poison. It numbs you. It makes you soft until you become useless. And the most dangerous part isn't that others know this. It's that you don't. Every time you convince yourself that being liked is enough, you turn yourself into an unarmed soldier standing in the middle of a battlefield. Have you ever wondered how manipulation truly works? It doesn't begin with threats or screams. It begins with compliments. First, they give you what you crave most: acceptance, smiles, a seat at the table. They hand it to you gently, like a soft touch, but hidden behind it is the trap, because whoever gives you approval also has the power to take it away whenever they want. And in that moment, you become dependent. They pull the rope, and you obey without realizing it. That is how kindness, when misplaced, turns into chains. Respect, on the other hand, cannot be bought or negotiated. It doesn't come from giving your time and energy away recklessly. It comes from your limits, from your ability to say no, even when the whole world expects you to say yes. And here lies the brutal truth. Those who set boundaries are often disliked at first, but eventually they are feared. And fear, even if it sounds dark, is far more reliable than fleeting affection. Look around you. The people who constantly please others are drained, invisible, irrelevant. They are remembered only when someone needs something from them, and quickly forgotten the moment they stop being useful. Meanwhile, those who cannot be bought, those who measure their generosity carefully, radiate something different. They radiate power. And in a hostile world, power is survival. Don't confuse this with coldness. It's not about shutting down your humanity, but about transforming it into strategy. The mistake is in giving it away endlessly, like pouring water from a bottomless jug. Instead, it should be guarded like a rare and precious wine. Those who give too much turn themselves into a running faucet that everyone drains without hesitation. But those who control it turn every gesture into something valuable. And what is truly valuable is never discarded. Stay here, because what comes next goes beyond simply giving up the need for affection. It's about learning how to transform your kindness into a strategic weapon, rather than letting it become your chain. And this is where it gets truly uncomfortable. How to turn your desire to please into your greatest advantage. Most people don't realize this, but poorly managed kindness becomes a debt. Every favor you do without strategy becomes an unpaid bill that no one acknowledges, but everyone expects you to keep paying. And the irony is cruel. The more you give, the less value your gifts hold. Abundance destroys prestige. A rare coin provokes desire, but when coins flood the ground, they are stepped on like dirt. The same law applies to your time, your attention, your generosity. What few dare to admit is that human psychology does not respect what is abundant. It respects what is scarce. That is why those who guard their energy and their actions with precision are seen as greater, more mysterious, more powerful. Scarcity creates mystery, and mystery creates respect. While you shout to be seen, others stay silent, and that silence weighs heavier than all your desperate cries. And here comes the most disturbing truth. The need for approval doesn't just weaken you, it makes you predictable. And in a world where everyone is competing to survive, predictability is death. The person who always needs to be liked behaves in the same way again and again, yielding, smiling, avoiding conflict, seeking approval at any cost. Do you know what it means to be predictable in such a world? It means being weak. The predictable player always loses. Those who truly dominate the game know how to disguise their intentions. They know when to extend kindness. And more importantly, they know when to take it away. That balance is what builds the kind of respect that lasts longer than affection and carries far more weight than approval. That cold calculation does not make them monsters. It makes them strategists. Think carefully about it. Every great leader in history followed a pattern. They were never chasing sympathy. They were always pursuing control. They could smile with warmth and subtlety, and in the very next moment, impose a decision with unshakable firmness. That duality is what kept people in suspense, uncertain of what might come next, forcing them into respect. Respect is born precisely in that realm of uncertainty, in that fragile but powerful space where others realize that underestimating you could cost them everything. This is why, if you continue watching this video, I will show you how to reprogram the way you relate to others, because it is not about abandoning your kindness or losing the essence of your humanity. It is about learning to use it wisely, as a card hidden up your sleeve, not as a token you hand out freely at the very beginning of every interaction. Power does not come from smiling constantly. It comes from knowing the exact moment to smile. Respect does not emerge from excess or constant generosity. It is born from calculated scarcity. And now, listen carefully, because what comes next is the most uncomfortable truth of all. Mastery is not found in giving endlessly, but in learning the art of withholding when everyone expects you to provide. That emptiness, that denial, that conscious withdrawal is the mark of true power. The person who dares to withdraw their energy becomes indispensable. The one who does not know how to withdraw becomes invisible. The deepest problem is that you confused kindness with value. You were taught to believe that kindness alone was enough to open doors, when in reality, what truly opens doors is the perception that not everyone can have access to you. This is where the darker side of the game begins. The more accessible you are, the less respect you receive. Think about it. Do you truly value what is always within reach? No. You use it, consume it, and soon forget it. Human nature longs for what it cannot easily possess, and it tends to disregard what is given without effort. That is why the obsession with being liked, with always being accepted, becomes your greatest curse. In your desperate attempt to be approved of, you end up revealing all your cards too early, and the one who reveals their cards too soon is left with no strategy at all. What few dare to admit is that human psychology does not respect what is abundant. It respects what is scarce. That is why those who guard their energy and their actions with precision are seen as greater, more mysterious, more powerful. Scarcity creates mystery, and mystery creates respect. While you shout to be seen, others stay silent, and that silence weighs heavier than all your desperate cries. And here comes the most disturbing truth. The need for approval doesn't just weaken you, it makes you predictable. And in a world where everyone is competing to survive, predictability is death. The person who always needs to be liked behaves in the same way again and again, yielding, smiling, avoiding conflict, seeking approval at any cost. Do you know what it means to be predictable in such a world? It means being weak. The predictable player always loses. Those who truly dominate the game know how to disguise their intentions. They know when to extend kindness. And more importantly, they know when to take it away. That balance is what builds the kind of respect that lasts longer than affection and carries far more weight than approval. That cold calculation does not make them monsters. It makes them strategists. Think carefully about it. Every great leader in history followed a pattern. They were never chasing sympathy. They were always pursuing control. They could smile with warmth and subtlety, and in the very next moment, impose a decision with unshakable firmness. That duality is what kept people in suspense, uncertain of what might come next, forcing them into respect. Respect is born precisely in that realm of uncertainty, in that fragile but powerful space where others realize that underestimating you could cost them everything. This is why, if you continue watching this video, I will show you how to reprogram the way you relate to others, because it is not about abandoning your kindness or losing the essence of your humanity. It is about learning to use it wisely, as a card hidden up your sleeve, not as a token you hand out freely at the very beginning of every interaction. Power does not come from smiling constantly. It comes from knowing the exact moment to smile. Respect does not emerge from excess or constant generosity. It is born from calculated scarcity. And now, listen carefully, because what comes next is the most uncomfortable truth of all. Mastery is not found in giving endlessly, but in learning the art of withholding when everyone expects you to provide. That emptiness, that denial, that conscious withdrawal is the mark of true power. The person who dares to withdraw their energy becomes indispensable. The one who does not know how to withdraw becomes invisible. The deepest problem is that you confused kindness with value. You were taught to believe that kindness alone was enough to open doors, when in reality, what truly opens doors is the perception that not everyone can have access to you. This is where the darker side of the game begins. The more accessible you are, the less respect you receive. Think about it. Do you truly value what is always within reach? No. You use it, consume it, and soon forget it. Human nature longs for what it cannot easily possess, and it tends to disregard what is given without effort. That is why the obsession with being liked, with always being accepted, becomes your greatest curse. In your desperate attempt to be approved of, you end up revealing all your cards too early, and the one who reveals their cards too soon is left with no strategy at all. Psychology is mercilessly clear about this. When someone detects your need for approval, they immediately understand that they can manipulate you. They don't even need to force anything upon you. All they have to do is threaten to withdraw their affection, their approval, their fragile smile, and instantly you fall to your knees, bending and twisting yourself so as not to lose that faint light that was never truly yours to begin with. Look around you. The individuals who awaken genuine respect are not the ones who say yes to everything. They are the ones who can say no without trembling. They are the ones who create discomfort through their silences. They are the ones who do not feel the need to explain every single move they make. And the unsettling truth is this: even if many people dislike them, no one dares to ignore them. Respect is not built on being agreeable. It is built on the possibility that your absence would weigh more heavily than your presence. Now pause for just a moment and reflect on yourself. How many times have people sought you out simply because they knew you could not say no? How many times have you felt that although you gave more than anyone else, you were valued less? That is the true price of wanting to be liked. You become an endless resource, a well from which everyone drinks, but no one ever stops to thank. And yet the greatest tragedy is not the use, it is the forgetfulness. When someone grows accustomed to your constant giving, they stop seeing it as a generous gesture. They begin to see it as your duty, your obligation. What once was nobility slowly transforms into contempt. And here lies the most disturbing revelation of all. The more you need to be liked, the weaker your identity becomes, because dependence on approval erodes the very core of who you are. It turns your strength into fragility, your authenticity into a mask, and your presence into a background noise people eventually stop noticing. In your search for love and recognition, you unknowingly hand over the very power that should have been yours. You begin to shape yourself into what others expect, slowly erasing the very essence of who you are. Today you change to please one person, tomorrow to satisfy another, and in the end, you become nothing more than a distorted reflection of countless foreign wills. Do you know what psychology calls this? The dissolution of the self. And a dissolved identity is fertile ground for manipulation, because when you stop standing in your own center, anyone can occupy it for you. Don't misunderstand me. I'm not telling you to turn into a cold monster. The key is not to kill your kindness, but to place it under your control. Think of it as a blade that you wield deliberately, rather than a leak of energy that anyone can exploit. The difference between a strategist and a naive soul lies in how they manage their humanity. The naive one gives everything away from the very beginning and ends up empty. The strategist offers just enough at the precise moment, and in doing so, multiplies their value. Let me give you a clear image. Imagine that every gesture of kindness, every minute of your time, every word of encouragement is a gold coin. If you throw those coins into the air for anyone to grab, you'll end up poor, and no one will respect you. But if you hand them out only when it is necessary, and to those who truly deserve them, your value will rise. That is how the psychology of power works. Scarcity generates respect. Abundance dissolves it. And what's unsettling is that you already sense this. You felt it every time someone used you, every time you were forgotten, right after giving everything. The wound of not being valued doesn't come from giving too little. It comes from giving too much. Yet society prefers you confused, because a human being who craves affection is a human being who can be governed. It is far easier to manipulate someone who fears rejection than someone who can withstand isolation. Think carefully about that. History remembers those who knew how to impose limits, not those who gave themselves away without measure. No one writes about the person who always said yes. No one builds statues for those who never made anyone uncomfortable. Legacy belongs to those who learned to be firm, those who understood that sympathy evaporates, but respect remains engraved, like iron pressed into flesh. That is why, if you are still here, it's because you already suspected this truth. You've spent too much energy moving in the wrong direction, and this moment is the signal you needed. I'm not talking to you about cruelty, I'm talking about strategy, not about coldness, but about survival. Because in this world, if you don't impose limits, someone else will decide for you where you begin and where you end. And when that happens, you will have lost the only battle that truly matters, the battle for your own identity. So stay, because now we are going deeper. I'm going to show you how to transform that desperate need for approval into a silent weapon, how to use mystery as a tool, how to make your presence stop being a plea for recognition and instead become an inevitable magnet. What comes next is not comfortable, but it is the key that will allow you to abandon the weakness of wanting to be liked and instead build the power of being respected. And now we arrive at the most difficult moment of all, the instant in which you must decide whether you will remain a slave to affection or if, for the very first time in your life, you will claim the respect you deserve. Because here is the truth. No one tells you. Life is not about collecting smiles. It is about leaving imprints no one dares to erase. Respect is not begged for. It is built, brick by brick, with every limit you enforce, with every no you hold firm in the middle of the storm, with every calculated gesture that makes it clear your value is not dependent on external approval. And if you've made it this far, you've already taken a step most people never dare to take. You've admitted that sympathy is a poison disguised as a virtue. Because now you understand. Being liked feels pleasant, yes, but being respected is what keeps you standing when everything else collapses. Love can vanish with the wind. Respect endures like a cold rock untouched by time. I want you to do something with me right now. Leave in the comments a single phrase that summarizes it all so that it will be engraved in your memory and in the memory of others. Right. I choose respect over fleeting love. And by doing so, you will have sealed a pact with yourself, a public reminder that you have stopped chasing what is fragile and instead embraced what is solid and unbreakable. If this message has stirred something inside you, subscribe now, because what comes next will hit harder, run deeper, and reshape you more completely than anything you've heard before. Hit the bell too, because here you won't find shallow tips or polite platitudes. Here you will be handed psychological tools, sharp, precise, and unapologetic, the kind that most people are too afraid to teach out loud. I won't say goodbye. I'll leave you with a challenge. Next time someone tries to buy your approval with charm and sweetness, remember this: you do not need their affection to survive. What keeps you standing is not their warmth, it is your own dignity. Affection can be pleasant, Respect is the currency of power. Close your eyes for a moment. Breathe. Listen to the quiet in the room and ask yourself, which matters more, being liked by everyone or being respected by yourself? Let that question sit against your ribs. When the truth lands there, like a weight you can't ignore, that's where your path to freedom begins. Most people trade little pieces of themselves to avoid friction. They smile when they want to speak. They agree when they want to object. They dim their edges to make someone else comfortable. This is how they stay liked, but it comes at a cost. Each concession chips away at your sense of self. Respect, on the other hand, is earned and preserved by boundaries, by saying what needs to be said, even when voices shake, by holding your standards and tolerating nothing less. To choose respect is to choose yourself. To choose being liked by everyone is to scatter yourself into fragments. Now, don't confuse respect with cruelty. Honesty can be firm and humane. When you speak from your center, you create a quiet authority that does not yell for attention. People will try to dull it, trivialize it, or wrap it in charm to avoid being confronted by their own smallness. That's when you must stand still. Watch how they react. The ones who respect you will lean in. The ones who only wanted to buy your favor will show their true colors. And that clarity, painful at first, is a relief. It means you are no longer wasting energy on illusions. Let me give you a simple practice to begin shifting. The next time you feel the impulse to soften your words, to keep the peace, pause for 3 breaths. Name silently what you actually want to say. Then speak it, without apologies, without theatrics. Observe what happens. People will either adjust to your new tone, or they will step back. Both are useful outcomes. One expands your world. The other reveals who you cannot rely on. Both move you forward. There will be those who call you cold or unkind when you stop trading yourself for smiles. Ignore it. Their labels are a mirror of their own fear. You are not responsible for how others interpret your integrity. You are responsible for practicing it. The more consistently you choose respect for yourself and for others, the quieter your life will become, because less drama will chase you and fewer people will demand to reorder you for their comfort. You might worry that holding firm will make you lonely. In truth, it filters your life so companionship becomes real. Fewer shallow connections, more genuine alliances. It invites people who can meet you where you stand, not where they wish you would bend. That kind of company is rare, but it is worth the loneliness that precedes it. Loneliness that follows a surrender is empty. Loneliness that follows a claim to self is sacred and necessary for growth. Now imagine this as a daily practice, not a show of strength, but a training of attention. Notice where you give up your truth to avoid a frown. Notice the small, habitual capitulations, letting someone cut you off, laughing when you didn't find something funny, changing plans to avoid a conflict, and begin to reassign your energy. Reclaim a small thing at first: your time, your voice, your right to say no. Each small reclamation compounds into an architecture of self-respect that cannot be dismantled by casual charm. There will be moments when your heart aches because the world you knew adjusts, or because certain people step away. Let that ache teach you. Grief is part of doing this work. It marks the loss of the comfortable illusions you had about being liked by all. But grief also signals a gain, the emergence of self-possession. You are not losing who you are. You are trading a borrowed identity for an owned one. This is not a call to hardness. It is a call to clarity. You can be compassionate and immovable at once. Compassion without clarity is weakness. Clarity without compassion is tyranny. Root both in your decisions. Be firm about what you will accept. Be kind in how you communicate it. Watch as people who respect themselves and you gather near, while those who sought to purchase your affection drift away. That is good. Their departure frees space for truth. Before I leave you with the challenge, make a promise to yourself. Starting today, honor one boundary you have been ignoring. Say no to something you would normally say yes to. Speak the honest sentence you have been rewriting in your mind for weeks. Keep it simple. Keep it true. Keep it unembellished. After you do it, sit with the feeling. Notice how your chest settles. Notice what shifts in the world around you. The change will feel small at first and then undeniable. So here's the challenge. Not an ending, but the beginning of a habit. For the next 7 days, each morning, stand before your reflection and say aloud one sentence that places your dignity above pleasing others. It can be as short as, "I will not apologize for my priorities," or "My peace is not negotiable." Mean it. Let the daily repetition train your nervous system to recognize respect as non-negotiable. At the end of the week, write down what changed. Which conversations felt different? Which choices required less inner debate? Which people adjusted their behavior? This log will be your proof that the muscle of self-respect grows when exercised. If you found this unsettling, good. Growth should unsettle you. If you felt ignited, even better. Transformation begins where comfort ends. Subscribe and ring the bell if you want more of this kind of work. Deep, unapologetic, and practical. I will keep bringing the tools that strip away illusions and teach you how to stand fully in yourself. I will not offer easy comforts. I will offer strategies that build you. I'll leave you with this final thought. Being liked by everyone is a shallow tide. Being respected by yourself is an unshakable ground. Choose the ground. Let it be the place you return to, again and again, until your choices are no longer dictated by the applause of others, but by the quiet compass of your own integrity. See you in the next video. If you still have the courage to keep opening your eyes. Have you ever felt that the more you try to explain what you're going through, the less people seem to understand you? That the more you open up about your pain, your dreams, or your plans, the smaller everything becomes. Your feelings, your hope, your strength, and that somehow, instead of moving forward, you feel stuck, even more lost. There's a deeper reason behind this, and Carl Jung understood it profoundly. Jung discovered that human beings carry an unconscious need to validate their existence through others. We crave approval. We seek to be understood. We long for connection. But in the process of searching for that external validation, we often give away something far more valuable than we realize: our personal power. Each time you reveal intimate parts of your life without discernment, you're not just sharing information, you're giving away energy, something sacred. A piece of your internal world that once spoken no longer belongs solely to you. It might seem harmless, even necessary, but it comes at a price. Because the moment you release your story into the world without proper intention, you weaken your own connection to it. And this is the paradox. Silence is not weakness. Silence is wisdom. The strongest people are not the ones who constantly talk about their process. They are the ones who live it, quietly, intentionally, with inner determination, because they understand something essential, that the deepest battles do not need witnesses. They need victory. And that victory, more often than not, is born in solitude. That's why Jung invites us to walk a different path, one that does not depend on external noise or outside opinions, but rather on an inner awakening. A path where silence becomes not a void, but a force, not an absence of words, but a space for truth. Today, I want to invite you to reflect on this, to explore 15 deep lessons that will show you why choosing silence at the right moment can be one of the most powerful acts of personal transformation you can practice. And more than that, how silence can become your greatest weapon, your inner compass, your most sacred ally. But before we dive in, I want you to remember something crucial. What is not spoken is nurtured, and what is nurtured in secret often blooms in strength in the visible world. Silence is not suppression, it is gestation. It is the space where your truth becomes solid, where your ideas gain clarity, and your spirit finds grounding. So if you're ready to stop talking and start building, if you're ready to preserve your energy and use it to shape something real, then this message is for you. Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to hear might forever change how you understand your life, your relationships, and your purpose. Let's begin. Lesson 1. Words reveal more than you think. Every time you speak, you leave a trace, not only in the heart or mind of the person listening, but in your own self. You shape your reality with the words you choose. You reinforce certain narratives. You give form to emotions that may not have been ready to emerge yet. Jung explained that when you verbalize an emotion or an experience, you are lifting it out of the unconscious mind and bringing it into the outer world. And that can be a double-edged sword. It can bring healing, or it can drain you. It all depends on the timing, the context, and the person you choose to share it with. Have you ever shared something deeply important to you, and afterward felt an odd sense of regret, as if something precious had been taken from you too soon? That is not just a passing emotion. It's your psyche signaling that a sacred moment was exposed without the proper protection. Words carry weight, and if you use them without awareness, they can empty you out from the inside. They can disempower your inner process by turning it into something external too soon, something exposed, something vulnerable. Silence, on the other hand, protects you. It creates a container. It gives you time to feel, to understand, to integrate before exposing yourself to the reactions or projections of others. In our modern world, we've been conditioned to share everything on social media, through texts, in casual conversations that go nowhere. We're constantly encouraged to be open, be transparent, speak our truth. But rarely do we pause to ask ourselves, do I really need to say this? Or am I only speaking because I don't know what else to do with what I feel? Learn to observe your inner world. Learn to listen without rushing to explain. Not every thought needs to be spoken. Not every feeling needs an audience. Some things only need to be understood by you, in silence. Because in that sacred silence, something powerful happens. You begin to own your truth without needing others to confirm it. You begin to heal without performance. And you begin to grow deeply from the inside out. And that is just the beginning. Lesson 2. What you keep quiet becomes stronger. There is a mysterious force that grows in silence. Carl Jung understood this as the incubation of the soul, a period where something profound takes form in the shadows, away from the noise, away from the outside world. When you stop talking about what's happening to you, you don't suppress it. You amplify it within. You start to feel it more deeply. You live it with raw intensity, and in that silent confrontation, something ancient awakens in you. Most people believe that by speaking about their pain, they will find relief. And sometimes that's true, but only for a moment. What really happens when you verbalize everything too quickly is that you dilute the experience. You give it away before fully understanding it. You hand over a sacred part of yourself to someone who can't feel what you're feeling, and often who doesn't even know what to do with it. And so you walk away, feeling even more confused, more empty, more misunderstood. Have you ever noticed how, after opening your heart to someone, you feel even more lost than before? That's because you were expecting a solution, a roadmap, a sign, a soothing word that would magically dissolve your chaos. But here's the truth. The answers you're seeking cannot be found in anyone else. No matter how well-intentioned the listener may be, no one can give you what you're not yet ready to give yourself. Silence is not weakness. It's not avoidance. It's not repression. Silence is the beginning of self-initiation. When you stop sharing every wound, every thought, every confusion, you begin to turn inward. You begin to listen, really listen, to your own voice. And that voice, though fragile at first, carries the seed of your personal wisdom. To remain silent is to step into your own sacred territory. It is to walk alone through the forest of your inner life. And yes, it is uncomfortable. Yes, it is lonely at times, but it is also where real transformation happens. Not the kind of change that comes from advice or therapy sessions or long conversations with friends, but the kind that arises from looking at yourself in the mirror of your soul and not turning away. You don't need others to understand your pain in order to heal. You need you, fully, presently, honestly. You need to sit with your story, no matter how painful it is. You need to embrace the broken pieces of your past, the doubts you still carry, the questions you've been too afraid to ask. And you need to do it without witnesses, without applause, without anyone's permission. Only commitment. That's where healing begins. Not with attention, not with validation, but with the quiet, persistent act of being there for yourself, no matter what. When you learn to live your inner processes without constantly externalizing them, something shifts. You stop needing others to carry what only you were meant to hold. You stop waiting for approval or understanding. You stop outsourcing your emotional responsibility. And in doing so, you begin to feel a very different kind of peace. Not a fleeting one, not a peace that depends on circumstances or people, but a deep, grounded peace that arises from the very core of your being. It's not loud, it's not dramatic, but it's real. And once you taste that kind of peace, you'll understand why Jung believed that silence was not the absence of sound, but the presence of the soul finally coming home. Lesson 3. The need for approval makes you weak. One of the greatest enemies of personal growth is the urge to share everything, just to feel validated. Jung believed that the human shadow feeds on insecurity, and one of the most common ways that insecurity shows up is through the compulsion to speak. When you talk about what you're doing or feeling in hopes of being understood, accepted, or praised, you're letting your identity be shaped by others. That makes you easy to manipulate, predictable, and fragile. Inner strength is born the moment you no longer need applause or understanding. When you can walk confidently, even if no one is watching. When you can build in silence, even if no one ever knows. Stop using words as an emotional shield. You don't need to justify yourself. You don't need to convince anyone. Your process is yours, And the more you protect it, the more powerful it becomes. Remember this: those who feel the greatest need to speak are often the ones who least understand what they're going through. Because those who truly understand remain silent. Lesson 4. The soul wears down when you speak too much. Every word you use has an energetic cost. We don't see it, but we feel it. Have you ever walked away from a conversation feeling drained after talking too much about your problems? That's emotional exhaustion. Jung taught that speaking without awareness weakens the soul. Because every time you name your pain without having processed it, you reactivate it, relive it, and make it grow. This isn't about repressing what you feel. It's about knowing when to speak, to whom, and for what purpose. Speaking with wisdom brings relief. Speaking out of habit brings fatigue. Not every wound needs to be shared. Some only need to be held quietly. At a deeper level, stop venting just to release emotion. Start observing what you feel. Write it down if necessary. Breathe through it, accept its presence, and you'll notice how the energy that once slipped away through words now transforms into inner strength. Lesson 5. Not everyone deserves access to your inner world. Jung believed the soul protects itself by setting boundaries. And one of the most vital boundaries is deciding who gets to enter your emotional space. Not everyone who listens does so with respect. Some are just curious, others feel envy, and there are those who use your vulnerability as ammunition to judge you or to weaken you. Your life is not a performance. You owe no one an explanation. Only you truly understand what you've lived through, what you feel, and how much each step costs you. Saying too much often opens doors that are hard to close later. And far too often, those invaded spaces turn into fresh wounds. Be selective. Guard your story as something sacred, because it is. Not everyone deserves to know your battles, and even fewer should hear about your dreams. Silence can be a powerful act of self-respect. Lesson 6. Transformation happens in the hidden. True metamorphoses never take place in public. They occur in silence, in retreat, within the sacred intimacy of your soul. Jung illustrated this with a powerful image, the work of the alchemist. The alchemist turns lead into gold, but he does it in secrecy, inside the solitude of his laboratory. That's how your own evolution works too. It's an internal process, slow, deep, and silent. When you stop talking about what you're trying to change in your life, you give space for that change to grow, without pressure, without judgment, without outside interference. The most important decisions are made in solitude, and the most meaningful growth happens the same way. You don't need to post every step or tell everyone what you're working on inside. Do it quietly, do it with intention, and when the change reveals itself, it will speak for you. Carl Jung taught that the unconscious holds everything we do not say and transforms it, not as punishment, but as potential. Every thought you choose not to voice becomes raw material for growth. It's like planting a seed in the dark. It can't be seen or heard, but it's alive. And while no one watches, it starts to grow roots. When you choose to keep your deepest processes to yourself, you give them the chance to mature. You protect them from being contaminated by the eyes or words of others. That's where you rebuild yourself. Speaking about your inner world can often be a way to escape it, a clever excuse to avoid facing your own chaos. But when you dare to remain silent with what lives inside you, a powerful transformation begins. You learn to hold your truth without depending on anyone else, because there is no force greater than someone who can sit with their own shadow. and still choose to walk in light. Lesson 7. Not everything needs to be explained. The human soul is a mystery. Jung understood this better than anyone. Not everything follows a visible logic. Not everything you feel can be put into words. And that's okay. We often try to describe our experiences in order to understand ourselves, but in doing so, we shrink what we've lived into limited, incomplete language. And what was once profound becomes small. Silence, on the other hand, honors the sacredness of your inner world. It gives your emotions space to speak without needing translation. It gives your pain dignity and your journey respect. There are moments in life that don't need to be shared. They simply need to be felt. Sometimes the wisest choice is not to speak, but to close your eyes and breathe. When you accept that you don't have to explain yourself, you gain freedom. And within that freedom, you grow. Lesson 8. Too many words create disconnection. One of the most common traps of the modern human is talking so much that they forget how to feel. Jung saw this as a psychological defense. Speaking endlessly is a way to avoid looking within. And worse yet, the more you talk, the more distant you become from yourself. Think about it. How many times have you explained what you're going through, only to realize you don't actually feel any better? How many times have you repeated the same story to different people, hoping that saying it out loud would somehow set you free? But the truth is, it doesn't set you free. It just keeps you distracted. Silence forces you to be present. It stops you from chasing answers outside and invites you to start feeling them from within. And when you finally learn to be with yourself without needing to speak, you begin to reconnect. You don't need to talk so much to heal. What you need is to truly listen to yourself. Lesson 9. True power is cultivated in the hidden. There's a reason why the wise have always been silent. Jung sensed this deeply. Real power doesn't make noise. It's something you feel. It's built in secrecy and expressed through the unseen. Nowadays, many believe that sharing everything is a sign of authenticity, but it's not. Authenticity is not exposure. It is alignment. You don't need to share your process to make it valid. You don't have to display your struggles to make them real. Your strength doesn't depend on others witnessing it. It depends on how you live it. The greatest kind of power is the one no one notices, yet it holds everything together. Like the roots of a tree, hidden underground, unseen, but without them, nothing grows. That's how your process is. That's how your soul is. And that's how your path should be. Deep, quiet, and real. If you're beginning to grasp the depth of these lessons, then you already understand why Jung was not just a psychologist, but a master of the soul. Silence isn't the absence of something. It's the purest form of presence. And when you begin to inhabit that silence, you start to hear your true voice. Lesson 10. Sharing too early weakens the process. Jung used to say that the soul needs space to find its own order before it is shared. When you speak too soon, before you've truly understood, what you reveal becomes vulnerable to outside interpretations that might only tangle your path further. Maybe all you wanted was some guidance, but instead you received judgment. Or maybe you sought comfort and found only doubt. That's what happens when you open your process before it has matured. Picture a flower blooming before its time. It withers. The same happens with you when you reveal something that's not yet ready to emerge. Learn to wait. Give your inner world the time it needs to gain strength. Not everything you feel is ready to be spoken aloud. And when it is, you'll feel it, not from a desperate need to release it, but from a conscious choice to share it. The one who knows how to wait in silence becomes the true master of their process. Lesson 11. Silence makes insecure people uncomfortable. Those who can't sit in silence with themselves often distrust those who can. That's why, when you choose to remain quiet, some may judge you. They'll call you distant, closed off, even cold. But Jung explained it clearly. Many people feel threatened by someone else's silence because they cannot bear their own. It reminds them of everything unresolved within, so they prefer noise. It distracts them from their inner emptiness. Don't change who you are, just to ease the discomfort of others. You don't have to fill silences that were never yours to begin with. Your inner peace is far more valuable than anyone's approval. To dwell in silence with dignity is one of the purest expressions of freedom. And those who truly value you won't need you to speak constantly. They'll feel your presence, even when you say nothing at all. Lesson 12. External noise silences intuition. We live in an era where everything is said, recorded, shared. And in the middle of so much noise, we forget something essential. The voice of intuition can only be heard in silence. Jung firmly believed that within each human being lives a natural wisdom, an inner compass that guides you. But it doesn't shout, it whispers. And if you're always talking, explaining, justifying, telling your story, you won't hear it. Next time you feel confused, don't rush to talk to someone. Sit with yourself. Turn everything off. Breathe and listen. At first, you may only hear mental noise, but if you stay there long enough, you'll begin to hear something else. That voice that rises from the deepest part of you, that is your intuition. And it holds more answers than you can imagine. But it only speaks in silence. Lesson 13. Sometimes, silence becomes your greatest shield when you're wounded, when you've been betrayed, or when you've lost something that mattered deeply. In those moments, the strongest impulse is often to speak, to tell your side of the story, to shout your truth, to release the weight inside you. But Jung taught that silence is not only wise, it's also protective. Speaking while you're still in pain can leave you exposed to those who don't deserve access to your vulnerability. It can turn your truth into a spectacle for people who will never understand the depth of what you're going through. Silence, on the other hand, shields you. It gives you space to see things clearly. It allows you to heal without putting yourself on display. Most importantly, it prevents your inner journey from being turned into a narrative that others distort for their own purposes. Not everyone deserves to know how you feel, and not everyone knows how to protect what you share. Learn to keep your sacred moments to yourself, and you'll see how healing accelerates when it's not polluted by the noise of other people's opinions. Lesson 14. Silence reveals who you truly are. In the end, when words run out and there's nothing left to explain, what remains is your essence. Jung knew this. Silence is not absence, it is revelation. When you stop explaining what you do, how you feel, or what you dream of, you begin to live it. And in that quiet experience, your real self emerges. You are what you do in solitude. You are what you think when no one is watching. You are what you hold together without anyone knowing. And that is power. Real power. Because no one can take away what you haven't shared. No one can twist what only you understand. Your silence is not empty. It is sacred ground. And the one who learns to dwell in it becomes their own guide. Now you see, holding back from sharing your life isn't about isolation. It's about liberation. It's not fear. It's wisdom. It's not coldness. It's strength. Carl Jung showed us that the path to true transformation doesn't lie in noise or in others' opinions, but in deep connection with yourself. So don't fear silence. Instead, fear speaking before you're ready, because words can break what silence was trying to heal. Nurture your inner world. Guard it. Protect it. And when you're ready to share it, you won't need to explain. It will be evident. If this message has stirred something within you, share it. There are thousands of people out there who need to hear this, but don't know how to ask. And if you want to keep receiving messages like this, stay close. This journey is just beginning. Now you understand. It's not about silence for silence's sake. It's about learning to protect what matters most, your inner world. Carl Jung didn't speak of empty silence, but of fertile silence, silence that nourishes, that heals, that transforms. Because what is not spoken grows within. What is kept with purpose becomes wisdom. We live in a time where everyone wants to be heard, yet so few are willing to listen to themselves. A time where everyone wants to speak, but almost no one wants to understand. And you have the chance to change that, to create a new way of living, a way that is more authentic, more powerful, more free. Silence isn't about disappearing. It's about showing up differently, from your center, from your truth. And when you learn to live without having to explain everything, something amazing happens. You no longer need anyone to understand you, because you've understood yourself. You don't have to prove anything. Your life speaks for you. You no longer seek validation, because you've already given yourself what you used to expect from others. That is power. That is maturity. That is awakening. Jung left us these teachings not as rules, but as guiding lights, so you could find yourself amidst the world's noise. And if you apply them, believe me, you'll never be the same. Because those who learn to stay quiet with wisdom no longer beg for understanding. Think for a moment about everything you've ever shared, with friends, with family, with people who are no longer even part of your life. What did that give you? Understanding? Relief? Judgment? Indifference? The truth is that what we often share to heal ends up hurting us more, because not everyone understands where you're speaking from. Not everyone has lived what you've lived, and even if they mean well, they cannot process your truth with the same depth you do. That brings us to a powerful realization. There are things only you are meant to carry, not because you have to bear it all alone, but because some parts of your soul were made only for you. What you keep to yourself doesn't isolate you. It protects you. It prepares you. It defines you. And when you learn to live that way, you come to a deeper truth. The real enemy was never the other person. It was your own need to be understood. That part of you that felt it had to explain itself to be seen. And that was the trap. The moment you no longer need to share your journey in order to feel it matters is the moment you are free. The moment you stop using words as crutches and begin walking with the strength of your experience. Because some silences aren't empty at all. They are full of meaning. They are sacred pauses where your next level is being prepared. And in that pause, in that apparent stillness, you are growing. Jung said that the human being is divided between what it shows and what it hides. And real balance is found when you learn to reconcile both worlds. It's not about hiding or isolating yourself. It's about wisely choosing what you share and what you preserve. Sometimes keeping something to yourself isn't about fear. It's about speaking to life with reverence. Because there are processes that should not be shouted. They should be honored. Silence then stops being absence and becomes a temple. A space where you rebuild yourself, where there's no need to fake, to explain, or to convince anyone. Just you, your truth, and the miracle of being present with yourself. And in that state, your true evolution begins. That's why today, more than ever, I invite you to make peace with your silence. Stop fighting that part of you that doesn't want to share everything. Because it's not selfishness, it's emotional wisdom. And believe me, once you begin to live this way, many things will change. You'll become more selective, more focused, more resilient. You'll stop wasting time in empty conversations. You'll stop giving yourself to people who can't receive you. And most importantly, you'll stop betraying yourself to fit into places you were never meant to be. Your silence will become your new identity. And from that place, everything you build will be more real. So ask yourself this question now. What part of you deserves to be safeguarded? What process are you living through that needs silence instead of words? And once you find the answer, make room for it, protect it, love it. Because right there, your new self is being born. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you is awakening. Something that no longer wants to live halfway, that no longer wants to speak to be accepted, but to be silent, to be free. This wasn't just a video. It was an invitation, a doorway to a new way of living, more conscious, more grounded, more yours. And now, it's up to you to decide what to do with what you've heard. You can let it pass, like so many messages that come and go. Or you can do something different. Close your eyes, breathe, and make a choice. A silent choice, an intimate, powerful one. To protect your inner world, to guard your energy, to walk through your process without needing to share every detail. That is emotional maturity. That is evolution. If something in this message touched your soul, don't ignore it. Share it with someone else who also needs to remember, silence is not weakness, it's strength. Being silent is not hiding, it's rising. And not everything needs to be told, because what's most sacred must be protected. And now I'd love to know, what part of this message truly touched something deep within you? What phrase, what idea stirred something in your chest or made you pause and reflect, even if just for a second? Go ahead and share it in the comments. I genuinely want to read what moved you, because what resonates with your soul says a lot about where you are on your journey. And that connection, that reflection, is where real transformation begins. If you've made it this far, it's probably not by accident. Maybe you've been feeling that tug, that quiet but persistent call from somewhere inside you, telling you there's more to life than just going through the motions. Maybe something in this message reminded you of the parts of yourself you've forgotten, ignored, or buried under the weight of daily survival. And maybe, just maybe, you're ready to remember. Here, we don't talk just to fill the silence. This isn't a space for empty words or temporary motivation. This is a space for awakening, for unlearning, for choosing a different path. One that doesn't try to fix you because you were never broken to begin with. One that helps you see yourself clearly, not the version others want you to be, but the version you were always meant to become. And if something in you feels drawn to that, if something in you whispers, yes, this is what I've been looking for, then stay. Subscribe. Not because everyone says you should, but because a part of you is ready to grow, to expand, to let go of the old stories that have kept you small and start writing new ones rooted in truth. You don't need to have everything figured out. You don't need to be perfect, or healed, or strong, all the time. You just need to be willing. Willing to feel. Willing to listen to that quiet voice that's been waiting patiently for you to stop ignoring it. Willing to begin. Because here, we're not just talking. We're remembering. We're feeling. We're healing. We're transforming. Together. And deep down, your soul already knows that's why you're here. Have you ever felt like you're constantly giving explanations no one asked for? As if every step you take, every choice you make, every quiet moment you embrace needs to be justified, as if simply existing requires a reason. It's exhausting, isn't it? Maybe you've caught yourself explaining why you're tired, why you didn't want to go out, why you chose to take care of yourself, as if choosing yourself was somehow a betrayal, a sin you must account for. And without even realizing it, you begin to ask for permission to exist. You carry this invisible burden, constantly explaining yourself, as if you owe the world an apology for being who you are. It's like walking around with a heavy backpack full of silent regrets. I'm sorry I didn't fit in. I'm sorry I wasn't enough. The more you speak, the further you drift from yourself. We live in a world that teaches us from an early age to please, to adapt, to mold ourselves so we don't make others uncomfortable. So we become masters of justification. We learn to turn our feelings into arguments, into defensive speeches, because somewhere along the way, we were made to believe that our emotions must be validated by others before they can be real. But eventually, something deep inside you whispers, enough. Enough of translating yourself so others can understand. Enough of begging for acceptance, disguised as explanation. Sometimes silence is not surrender. Sometimes it's the first act of self-respect. Because silence can also be a boundary, a firm, quiet line that says, I no longer need to convince you of my truth. What if true self-love begins at the very moment you stop explaining yourself? Have you ever stopped to ask where this compulsive need to explain everything comes from? It's not just a habit, it's a wound. There is something ancient within you, something that fears being misunderstood. Maybe it goes back to your childhood, to that moment when you learned that if you didn't explain yourself well enough, you'd be rejected, or worse, abandoned. So you started overanalyzing every word, every action, monitoring your own behavior as if you were walking on a minefield, where one wrong step could mean emotional exile. This is emotional memory echoing through your soul. Don't say that. What will people think? Be quiet. That's not appropriate. If you act like that, no one will love you. And those words planted a seed inside you, a seed of doubt, a doubt that whispers, maybe I'm not enough as I am. That seed grows into a creeping vine, wrapping around your voice, suffocating your authenticity, dulling your peace. And without realizing it, you begin to live like you constantly need to prove you deserve to be here. But it's not your fault. This is what you learned in order to survive. In a world that often punishes vulnerability and glorifies the mask. Still, every mask tightens over time. Eventually, you can't breathe beneath it anymore, because living to be understood is a slow death in the silence of your own soul. You have the right to be yourself, even if no one understands you. You have the right to feel, without giving explanations. You have the right to exist, even if your story can't be explained in neat, tidy words. And what if the fear of being misunderstood is just a reflection of a childhood where no one truly took the time to understand you? We tend to believe that speaking is a way to set ourselves free, but sometimes speaking too much becomes a prison made of invisible bars. When you feel the need to explain every no, every decision that breaks expectations, every instinct that deviates from the mold, your voice is no longer an expression. It becomes a defense, a shield, a wall, a silent plea to be accepted. And little by little, without even noticing, you stop speaking to express yourself and start speaking to protect yourself. You speak from fear, from guilt, from that old belief that if you don't explain every little thing, you'll lose someone's love. And that kind of speaking, it drains you. It tires your soul, weighs on your chest, dims the light in your eyes. Explaining everything, all the time, is like standing trial every day, where you play the accused, the lawyer, and the judge. You punish yourself for feeling what you feel, and then you struggle to make it all sound acceptable. And still, sometimes they don't believe you, they don't understand you, they don't hear you. Has that ever happened to you? Speaking out of fear is like trying to stop a storm with your bare hands. The words become fragile, nervous, stripped of truth, and your heart, despite all its efforts, remains alone. Your soul knows when you speak from love and when you speak from fear of not being enough. And deep down, you know it too. You feel that difference in your throat, in your stomach, in your chest. And there, in that awareness, a painful but freeing truth emerges. No matter how much you explain, those who don't want to understand you never will. Not because of who you are now, but because they never tried to see you from the beginning. And maybe, just maybe, it's time. Time to stop speaking just to convince and start embracing silence to begin healing. There's a moment in life, a quiet, raw, but beautiful moment, when you realize that silence isn't emptiness, it's shelter, a place without words where finally you can hear yourself again. And no, I'm not talking about the uncomfortable silence, the kind that feels like punishment. I'm speaking about a kind of silence that embraces you, not the absence of sound, but the sacred presence that arrives after countless internal battles. It's not the kind of silence that screams in your chest or pleads to be broken. Number this silence doesn't demand explanations. It doesn't ask for anything in return. It simply is. It exists alongside you, like a gentle witness to everything you've carried within. And in its presence, you feel, maybe for the first time, what it means to be completely seen without judgment. This silence does not question your pain. It doesn't interrogate your sadness, your fears, or your moments of uncertainty. It doesn't try to fix you or mold you into something more convenient, more acceptable. It doesn't ask you to be okay. Instead, it meets you exactly where you are. It says, you don't have to explain why you feel this way. Just rest. And it is in this silence, listen carefully now, that your soul finally finds a place to breathe, to exhale, without fear of being misunderstood. Because speaking can be exhausting, especially when your words are shaped by wounds, when your voice trembles under the weight of what you've endured. But silence, when chosen consciously, not imposed, becomes a form of healing. It becomes medicine, not the kind that numbs the pain, but the kind that brings you back to yourself, in that sacred space where you no longer feel the need to justify your existence. Something incredible begins to happen. You start to reclaim your voice, not the one you use to speak to the world, but the quiet one within that has always guided you. The voice of your truth, your intuition, your essence. And in that moment, something begins to soften. The sharpness of the pain dulls. The fire of resentment transforms into a quiet flame of awareness. The need for external validation fades away, and in its place, you find something far more powerful: the permission to simply be. To be silent is not to run away. To be silent is not to surrender. To be silent, in its truest form, is to return home, to yourself. It's to look within and say, without a single word, I believe you. I see you. I choose you. Because not everything has to be understood. Not everything has to be explained. There are feelings that are meant to be felt, not translated. There are moments when your silence is not avoidance. It's protection. And there are people in your life who may never deserve the explanation you keep trying to offer them. So close your eyes, take a deep breath, and allow yourself to listen, truly listen, without needing to speak. Perhaps in that stillness, your real journey back home begins. Home, not as a place, but as a state of being where you no longer abandon yourself for the sake of others. When was the last time you truly chose yourself, without guilt? Do you even remember? Or has it become so normal to put yourself last, waiting for someone else to validate your worth, that you've forgotten what it feels like to be your own priority? Choosing yourself is not selfishness. It is emotional survival. It's an act of radical self-respect. It's standing in front of the mirror and saying, no more. No more depletion. No more over-explaining. No more trying to convince others that I am worthy of love, rest, or understanding. But I know, I really do, that the day you decide to place yourself first, something inside you shakes, because you were taught to please others, to yield, to smile even when you're breaking, to sacrifice yourself for the comfort of everyone around you. And when you finally say no, without any justification, the world shifts. The masks fall. Some people walk away. Others get angry. Why? Because you're no longer the version of yourself they constructed to meet their needs. And yes, it hurts. It stings to be misunderstood, to be left behind by those who once claimed to care. But you know what? It's real. It's liberation. It's rebirth. Choosing yourself is an act of courage, because when you do, you are also saying goodbye to the version of you who waited endlessly to be chosen by others. You are burying the compulsion to explain your wounds, your pauses, your path. And yes, it's terrifying, because choosing yourself might mean standing alone for a while. But let me tell you something from the depths of my own experience. The solitude that comes from choosing yourself is not a punishment. It is a cleansing. It is sacred space to heal, to reconstruct your identity, to remember that your value is not up for negotiation, not determined by what others accept or fail to understand. There is a quiet power in saying, today, I don't need to explain myself. Today, I just need to honor myself. And even if no one sees that moment, even if the world doesn't clap for you, it will remain one of the holiest decisions you've ever made. But let's not pretend it's easy. Many of us spent years silent out of fear, not choice. That's a different kind of silence. A silence that doesn't heal. It suffocates. A silence that wraps around your throat like a knot because you've convinced yourself that speaking up will only bring more pain. And yes, sometimes talking hurts, but staying silent, when that silence is rooted in fear, can be even more damaging. Have you felt it? That choking silence where you swallow your truth to avoid conflict, where you bury your feelings just so you don't make anyone uncomfortable. That kind of silence is like swallowing glass, invisible, but sharp enough to break you from within. And worst of all, with time, You get used to it. You become skilled at smiling when you want to scream. You say, "I'm fine," when everything in you is trembling. You learn to fake calm while chaos rages beneath your skin. But silence born from fear is not peace. It is a quiet war, one where the battlefield is your own body, your own mind, your own heart. And that internal war, day after day, drains your spirit. It steals your glow. It convinces you that you don't have the right to exist fully, to take up space, to be heard. Eventually, you lose the ability to identify what you feel, because you've silenced yourself for so long that you no longer recognize the map of your emotions. So what's the difference between the silence that heals and the silence that destroys? One word: intention. The healing silence comes from choosing yourself. The destructive silence comes from fearing the loss of someone else. One whispers, "Today, I will care for myself." The other murmurs, "I'm not worthy of being heard." But you are. You are worthy. Worthy of spaces where your voice doesn't need to defend itself, where it simply gets to exist. You deserve relationships where silence is a moment of peace, not a prison. And if you haven't found those spaces yet, be that space. Be the one who listens to your own soul. Be the one who allows your heart to speak, and also to rest in silence, when that is the truest expression of self-love. One day, and you won't know exactly when or how, but one day, something inside you will quietly break, not in anger, not in sadness, but in a strange, sacred stillness. A calm knowing will rise in you, and that day, without a big announcement, without drama, you will simply say, "Enough." And that day will change you forever, because you will finally realize that you no longer owe anyone an explanation. Not because you feel superior, but because you now understand. Anyone who truly loves you, anyone who truly sees you, doesn't need you to justify your existence. It will be a quiet day, a holy day, a day where you choose not to answer certain questions, where you stop giving reasons for your fatigue, your distance, your boundaries, where you stop translating your soul so others can understand its language. Because constantly explaining yourself is a form of begging for permission. Permission to feel, to choose, to be. But no one else holds that power. They never did. Only you can grant yourself that freedom. To stop explaining doesn't mean to close yourself off. It means to open yourself more fully to your truth, to your intuition, to the wisdom within that knows some choices are not made with logic, but with the heart. Because the decisions that come from the soul may not always be rational, but they are always real. And the truth, when it's real, never needs a justification. So, you realize that silence isn't emptiness, it's wholeness. It's telling the world, "I no longer live to be understood. I live to simply be." And from that place, you begin to attract people who don't over-explain themselves either, because they just feel you, they resonate with you, they honor your energy. And that is freedom. Some wounds don't bleed, but they speak. They speak without asking permission. They speak even when you wish they'd stay quiet. Sometimes it's old pain that pushes you to explain too much, to justify every action, every emotion, every absence, as if through words you could stop the pain from returning. But it's not your voice that needs to be heard. It's your wound. Do you remember that time you said, "This hurts," and they told you you were overreacting? When you asked for love and they called you needy? From that moment, your soul learned that in order to be heard, it had to explain itself. And you started repeating yourself over and over again, hoping that this time someone would understand, that this time someone would stay. The truth is, you never wanted to talk so much. You just wish someone would say, even once, "You don't need to explain. I see you." You wanted to feel safe being who you are. You longed to be accepted without needing a mask. That's why you spoke so much. Not for attention, but out of fear of being abandoned. Each word was a silent plea. Can you see me now? Do you understand me now? Are you going to leave me again? But there's a truth that even though it hurts, sets you free. The person who doesn't want to see you won't, no matter how loud you scream. And the one who does want to see you doesn't need you to say a thing, because soul recognizes soul, and that doesn't need to be explained, it's simply felt. So take a deep breath, turn inward, and speak only when your heart decides, not when the wound demands. Because you are not your explanations, you are the truth that lives behind them. There's a kind of exhaustion that sleep can't cure. It's a soul-deep weariness, not from your body, but from years spent explaining yourself, defending yourself, trying to be understood by people who never truly wanted to listen. Have you ever felt that? Speaking from the heart, and all you get is silence. Sharing your wounds with someone who only responds with judgment or apathy, hoping for an empathetic glance, but getting criticism instead. That hurts. But what hurts more isn't the cold reaction. It's the echo of your soul, feeling invisible all over again. And so, little by little, something inside you starts to fade. You stop talking like before. You stop sharing with the same light in your voice. Not because you have nothing to say, but because you finally understood. Some places are not meant for your truth. The soul gets tired when it's ignored, when its voice becomes noise to others, when its emotions are dismissed, mocked, rejected. And that's when many of us learn to stay silent, not out of choice, but for protection. Because sometimes it hurts less to stay quiet than to feel again the wound of not being heard. But that's not healing. That's hiding your pain beneath the rug of your soul. And sooner or later, that rug gets lifted. That's why today, I invite you to pause, not to explain yourself, but to hold yourself. Close your eyes and ask, where did I exhaust myself from talking too much? When did my soul go unheard? And what do I need now to begin truly listening to myself? Because when you listen with love, when you stop demanding explanations from yourself, that's when real healing begins. We live in a world that demands smiles, a world uncomfortable with raw pain, a world that wants you to say, "I'm fine," even if you're falling apart inside. And little by little, you learn to justify your sadness, to explain why you're not okay, to offer valid reasons, hoping people won't walk away when they see your tears, as if feeling deeply was a flaw, as if your pain needed a signed approval to be real. But no, pain doesn't need to be explained. Pain deserves to be honored. You don't need to justify your tears. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your sorrow. You're not required to dress up what's breaking inside you with pretty words. Because pain isn't looking for approval. It's looking for presence. It needs space to breathe. It needs your arms, not your arguments. And you know what's the saddest part? That pain often grows, not because of what it feels like, but because of how often you feel forced to justify it. I'm just tired, you say. I've had a rough week. Sorry, it's just stress. Lies dressed as explanations. To avoid discomfort, to stay accepted, to not be seen as weak, dramatic, or negative. But feeling doesn't make you weak. Denying what you feel, that's what breaks you. So today, let yourself feel, without guilt, without explaining, without covering it up. Your pain doesn't need logical proof to be valid. Your soul already knows, and all it's asking of you is to stop fighting with what you feel. Make silence your temple, and within that temple, let your pain speak, free of judgment. Here begins true emotional freedom. There's a silent belief that lives in many wounded hearts, the idea that if you open your soul completely, you'll be more loved, and so you share everything. You undress emotionally, confess your most intimate wounds, hoping that someone, upon seeing your raw sincerity, will hold you tighter. But it doesn't always happen that way. Not everyone is ready to hold your truth. Not everyone has the sensitivity to receive what you've kept quiet for years, and most painfully, not everyone deserves it. Your truth is sacred. It's not a speech to persuade, not a product to be approved. Your truth is a fire. It can illuminate or it can burn. It all depends on where you place it. And many times, in the name of love or the desire for closeness, you gave yourself completely to people who lacked the ability or the intention to truly understand you. People who turned your vulnerability into judgment, who used your confessions as weapons, who saw your sincerity as weakness. So you shut down. You promised never to open up again. But that's not fair to you. The mistake wasn't trusting. The mistake wasn't speaking. The pain came from not recognizing who did and who didn't deserve that sacred part of you. Learning to choose who gets to hear your truth is an act of self-love. It's saying, my story isn't for just anyone. It's for those who know how to honor it. Because there are those who only want to know you to control you, and there are those who listen to protect you. The difference lies in their presence, their energy, their intention. Not everyone deserves your silence, and not everyone deserves your voice. Both are gifts. So don't blame yourself for having revealed yourself. But from now on, open up only where your soul feels safe. Sometimes, talking too much becomes a form of forgetting, an elegant distraction, an ancient strategy to avoid feeling what truly lives inside you. Because while you talk, analyze, justify, explain, you drift away from yourself. You dissolve into the other person. You get lost in the maze of what others expect from you. But when you choose silence, not the kind that's imposed, but the sacred kind, something inside you aligns. The pieces begin to fall into place. Chaos finds a center. Silence, at this level, is not hiding. It's returning. It's allowing yourself to hear what the noise of the world had drowned out. That soft, persistent, authentic voice. The voice of your soul. That's when you realize you have nothing to prove. You're not here to please or to fit in. You came to remember who you are, not to explain yourself. In that silence, external judgments dissolve. The need to be understood fades, and in its place, certainty arises. You don't need to be understood to have value, because your worth doesn't lie in how well you can explain your pain, but in how deeply you dare to dwell in it. Silence then becomes a medicine, a way to reconnect, a mirror where you finally recognize yourself, without ornaments, without scripts, without defenses, and you begin to see that everything you were looking for on the outside was waiting quietly, patiently, lovingly, within, silent, still, present. You remain quiet to remember, quiet to return, quiet to heal. Because sometimes the road back to yourself begins with one simple, powerful silence. There's a quiet moment, almost imperceptible, when something inside you changes. There are no screams, no drama, just an inner decision. Firm, calm, final. I won't beg anymore. And it's not pride, it's not coldness, it's dignity waking up. It's self-love finally rising from the ground where it knelt for so long. Because yes, you did beg. You begged with explanations. You begged with apologies you didn't owe. You begged with sweet words that masked pain. You begged through anxious silences, hoping the other person would notice your absence. And that begging wasn't always obvious. Sometimes it disguised itself as patience or excessive understanding or pretending everything was fine. But your soul remembers it all. It remembers how you dimmed your light so as not to bother, how you got lost just to be loved, how you explained yourself over and over again, hoping to be enough. Until one day, you choose yourself, not out of anger, but out of love. A love so deep, so true, that it no longer allows you to keep giving away your pieces to those who don't honor them. Because the soul that chooses itself stops begging, stops explaining, stops waiting. It begins to walk. It walks without resentment, but with memory. It walks without revenge, but with boundaries. It walks with the heart in hand, not to offer it, but to finally hold it. And in that step, everything changes. Not outside, but inside of you. Silence becomes your companion. Solitude becomes your home. And you finally become your own safe place. To convince, what a heavy word when it's born out of fear. Convincing someone that you're enough, that you're worth staying for, that your feelings aren't too much, that your wounds aren't a burden. It's a dance that drains you, a conversation that echoes endlessly in your chest. What if I explain it better? What if this time they understand me? What if I change a little just so they won't leave? But you don't see that every time you do. You're betraying yourself, piece by piece. You let go of your essence just to fit in. You reshape your love to make it acceptable. You soften your truths so they won't disturb. And what ends up hurting the most isn't even the rejection. It's everything you had to stop being to avoid it. Until one day, you've had enough. Not of them, but of yourself. Of looking at your reflection and not recognizing who you've become. Of realizing that trying to convince someone is a golden prison, shiny on the outside, suffocating within. That day, your soul makes a promise. Never again. No more begging to be understood by someone who chooses not to see you. No more translating yourself. No more performing to be loved. That day, words shrink. You only say what truly matters, what rises from your core. And if they don't understand, that's okay, because your truth isn't up for debate. It's meant to be lived. Whoever has a soul will feel it. So lower your voice, not out of fear, but like someone guarding a treasure. Your truth doesn't need volume, only direction. There is no act more intimate or more powerful than the moment you decide to go quiet. And in that silence, you choose yourself. You don't stay quiet out of surrender, but out of self-respect. You're not silent because you fear the response, but because you finally love yourself enough to stop chasing it. Because you now know that some battles are not won through words, but through letting go. Silence can also say, I owe you nothing. I don't need your approval to exist. What I know about myself is enough. And that is an inner revolution. For years, they taught you that your worth depended on being understood, on being clear, on being coherent for others. But no one ever told you that your worth also lives in your silence, that your voice remains alive even when you don't speak, that you are still whole even when you don't explain yourself. In that silence, something new begins, a reunion, a rebirth, a reconciliation with yourself. You stop trying to persuade, you stop needing to please, you simply crave peace. And peace doesn't shout, peace doesn't argue, Peace settles in when you no longer bargain with your truth. So yes, silence is an act of love, of power, of maturity. Silence to avoid betraying yourself. Silence to break the cycle. Silence because sometimes silence isn't surrender, it's self-choosing. And in that sacred instant, true healing begins. Tell me, how many times have you broken just to be understood? How many times have you drowned in explanations no one asked for, just to avoid feeling unwanted? How many times have you muted your own essence, thinking that would make them love you more? And now that you've made it this far, you begin to see just how much strength lives in your silence. How beautiful it is to not have to explain who you are. Maybe healing doesn't happen when you finally say everything. Maybe it happens when you no longer feel the need to say anything at all. Maybe the soul doesn't crave words, it craves presence. It wants you to stay, to hold yourself fully, to choose you, even if no one else does. This video was a space to remind you of something incredibly important. You are not defined by your explanations. You don't need to convince anyone to deserve love. And sometimes, choosing to stay silent is the deepest act of self-love you can offer yourself. So now, I invite you to share in the comments the moment in your life when you first felt like you had to explain yourself all the time. Reflect on what might happen if today you decided to embrace silence, and in that silence, reconnect with yourself. If this message touched something deep within your soul, I ask you from the bottom of my heart to support this channel with a big like. That small gesture helps us continue creating these spaces of depth and healing for thousands of people just like you. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you never miss the next video that will appear right here on your screen. That next video will be another step on your journey back home. Because, as Carl Jung said, what you resist persists, what you accept transforms, and you are already ready to transform.